"I am not worth much, sir, but I'll spread my legs for a roof over my head." The giant widow offered, the lonely cowboy who claimed her so completely she never wanted to leave. The giant widow had nothing left, no husband, no home, no hope. Just her body to barter with this lonely cowboy who'd buried his heart 5 years ago alongside his wife and child. She expected him to accept. Expected to be used like Silas had used her. Expected another man to take what he wanted and toss her aside when he was done. But Ezra Dalton looked at this towering, desperate woman offering herself for shelter, and instead of reaching for her body, he did something that shattered everything Martha thought she knew about men, about herself, about what she deserved. He stepped aside and said 5 words that would change both their lives forever. "Come inside. Let's talk proper." Martha's knees nearly buckled. In her 28 years, no man had ever used the word proper when speaking to her. The wind cut through her thin shawl, carrying the smell of coming snow across the Wyoming plains, and she realized she was shaking not from cold, but from confusion. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Men like Silas had taught her exactly what she was worth. They took, they used. They reminded her daily that a woman her size was unnatural, that she should be grateful for any attention at all, even if it came with fists and cruelty. She picked up her carpet bag with trembling hands, every muscle in her body tense, waiting for the trap to spring. Ezra held the door open wider, his weathered face unreadable in the fading October light. He was tall himself, maybe 6 feet, but lean, with the kind of quiet strength that came from years of hard work rather than violence. His dark hair had streaks of gray at the temples, and his eyes held a sadness so deep it seemed to have roots that went down to bedrock. The inside of the ranch house smelled like wood smoke and loneliness. Everything was clean but untouched, like a museum to a life that had stopped living. Martha noticed small things immediately: a woman's sewing basket in the corner, dust-covered, a photograph on the mantel of a young woman holding a baby, both frozen in time, both gone. The kitchen table was set for one, had been set for one for so long there was a worn spot in the wood where Ezra's plate always sat. "You can put your bag down," Ezra said quietly, moving to the stove where a pot of something that might have been stew sat cold and forgotten. "I ain't gonna hurt you, ma'am. I ain't that kind of man." Martha stood frozen in the doorway. "Then what kind of man are you?" The question came out sharper than she intended, edged with all the years of disappointment and pain. Ezra turned to look at her. Really look at her. And for the first time in her life, Martha didn't see disgust or hunger in a man's eyes. She saw recognition. The recognition of one broken thing seeing another. "The kind that's been where you are," he said. "The kind that knows what it's like to have nowhere left to go." He ladled stew into a bowl, his movements slow and deliberate. "I do need help with the ranch. Winter's coming hard, and I can't manage alone anymore. I can offer you room, board, and fair wages once the spring cattle sales come through. But I won't." He paused, his jaw tightening. "I won't ask for nothing that ain't freely given. You work if you want. You leave if you want. But tonight, you eat, you rest, and you decide in the morning what you want to do." Martha felt something crack inside her chest. "Why?" Her voice broke on the word. "Why would you do that?" Ezra set the bowl on the table, and when he looked up, his eyes were wet. "Because 5 years ago, when my wife Sarah was dying of fever and I was begging God for mercy, she made me promise something. She said, 'Ezra, don't let grief turn you cruel. If someone needs help, you help them. You stay human.' I've been failing at that promise every day since. But today," he gestured to the chair, "today I'm gonna try to keep it." The stew was the first warm meal Martha had eaten in 3 days. She tried to eat slowly, tried to maintain some dignity, but hunger won. Ezra didn't watch her. He moved around the kitchen, making coffee, slicing bread, giving her space to be desperate without shame. When she finally finished, scraping the bowl clean, she found her voice again. "My husband Silas died 8 months ago in the mine," she said, the words tumbling out. "Collapse took him and 7 others. He left debts to the company, to the boarding house, to half the merchants in town. They took everything. The furniture, my mother's dishes, even my wedding ring, though it wasn't worth nothing. I worked at the laundry for a while, but the other women, she swallowed hard. They said I made them uncomfortable, said I wasn't proper, said I looked like I should be working alongside the men, not with decent ladies. That's foolishness, Ezra said flatly. That's my life, Martha countered. I've been too tall, too strong, too much since I was 12 years old. Silas married me because he needed help working his claim, not because he wanted a wife. He made that clear, real clear, every night. Her hands clenched on the table. So when I heard in town you needed help, I figured at least I could choose it this time. At least I could name the terms of my own. She couldn't finish. Couldn't say the word that had been echoing in her head for weeks. Prostitution, survival, desperation. Ezra sat down across from her, his coffee cup steaming between his calloused hands. Martha, that is your name, right? She nodded. Martha, I ain't gonna pretend I understand everything you've been through, but I know enough about being looked at like you're wrong somehow. Like you don't fit. Sarah, my wife, she was small and gentle and everything folks said a woman should be. When she died, people told me I'd find another. Like she was replaceable. Like love was just about filling a space. His voice went rough. I learned real quick that most folks don't see people. They see shapes they can fit into their understanding. Anything that don't fit gets pushed out. So, what do you see when you look at me? Martha asked, and she hated how much she needed the answer. Ezra met her eyes. I see someone who survived things that would have broken most folks. I see someone strong enough to stand on my porch and ask for help even though it probably killed your pride to do it. I see someone who deserves a hell of a lot better than what life's given you so far. Martha's throat closed. She'd been prepared for lust, for cruelty, for indifference. But kindness was dangerous. Kindness made you hope, and hope was the most painful thing a woman like her could carry. The spare room's through there, Ezra said, pointing to a door off the main room. It's small, but it's warm. You take it tonight. In the morning, if you want to stay and work, we'll figure out the details. If you want to move on, I'll give you provisions and no questions asked. But tonight, you're safe. That's a promise. Martha stood on shaking legs, picked up her carpet bag, and walked to the door. She paused with her hand on the frame. Mr. Dalton? He looked up. Thank you. The words felt strange in her mouth, foreign, like a language she'd forgotten how to speak. When she closed the door behind her and saw the small room, clean sheets on the bed, a quilt folded at the foot, a window with actual curtains, she sat down and cried for the first time since Silas died. Not from sadness, from the terrifying, fragile possibility that maybe, just maybe, she'd found somewhere she could stop running. The first light of dawn crept through the curtains, and Martha woke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon. For a moment, she forgot where she was, forgot the desperate offer, the unexpected kindness, the impossible hope. Then reality crashed back, and with it came the familiar weight of shame. She'd offered herself like a common whore to a stranger. What kind of woman did that make her? But her stomach growled, and the smell of real food pulled her from bed. She smoothed her dress as best she could, pulled her dark hair into a tight bun, and stepped into the main room. Ezra stood at the stove, his back to her, shoulders tense like a man who hadn't slept well. The table was set for two plates, 2 cups, like she mattered enough to be counted. Morning, he said without turning around. Hope you like your eggs scrambled. Never could get the hang of frying them proper. Martha's hands twisted in her skirt. Mr. Dalton, about what I said yesterday. Ezra. He turned to face her, spatula in hand. If you're gonna stay, you call me Ezra. And you don't owe me no explanations or apologies for surviving. We clear? She nodded, not trusting her voice. They ate in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who'd both learned that words could be weapons, and sometimes quiet was safer. When the plates were clean, Ezra pushed back from the table. Ranch needs a lot of work, he said, his tone businesslike now. Fences need mending before the snow comes. Barn roofs got leaks. I got about 40 head of cattle that need tending, and the chicken coop's falling apart. I've been letting things slide since. He stopped, cleared his throat. Since I stopped caring whether they got done or not, if you stay, I need real help. Not just cooking and cleaning, though that matters too. I need someone who ain't afraid of hard work." Martha stood. And for the first time since arriving, she let herself stand at her full height instead of hunching to seem smaller. "I worked Silas's claim for 6 years. I can swing an axe, mend fence, handle livestock. I'm stronger than most men you'd hire." Something flickered in Ezra's eyes, not discomfort, but respect. "Then we got a deal. You work the ranch, I provide room and board. Come spring when the cattle sell, you get a fair wage, $20 a month, same as I'd pay any hand." "That's too much," Martha breathed. $20 was more than she'd ever had at once in her life. "That's fair," Ezra corrected. "You do the work, you get the pay. No charity. We partners in keeping this place running." He extended his hand. "Deal?" Martha looked at his outstretched hand, calloused, honest, offering something she'd never had before. Respect. She gripped it firm. "Deal." The next weeks blurred into a rhythm that Martha's body remembered, but her heart had forgotten. She woke before dawn, started the fire, made coffee strong enough to strip paint. Ezra would appear, silent and efficient, and they'd work side by side as the sun climbed over the Wyoming hills. She discovered he wasn't lying about needing help. The ranch was barely holding together, like Ezra himself. Fences sagged, gates hung crooked. The barn had gaps in the walls where the wind howled through. But Martha knew how to fix things. She always had. By the end of the first week, she'd patched the chicken coop, and the hens were laying again. By the second week, she'd mended half the pasture fence. Her hands blistered but satisfied. Ezra watched her work with something like wonder, like he couldn't quite believe she was real. "You're good at this," he said one afternoon, as she hammered a post into frozen ground with powerful, precise strikes. "I'm good at surviving," Martha replied, driving the post home with one final blow. "Ain't much else I know how to do." "That ain't true," Ezra handed her the next post. "You're good at a lot of things. You just been around folks too stupid to notice." The words settled into Martha's chest, warm and unfamiliar. She wanted to believe them. Wanted to believe that maybe she wasn't just a burden or a mistake. But years of Silas's voice in her head telling her she was lucky he'd married her, that no one else would want a giant freak made belief feel dangerous. That night, Martha made venison stew from a deer Ezra had shot, adding wild herbs she'd found near the creek. When Ezra took his first bite, he went still. This is real good, Martha. It's just stew." "No." He shook his head, and his voice went thick. "Sarah used to make stew like this. I ain't tasted anything that reminded me of home in 5 years." "Thank you." Martha's throat tightened. She'd made a man remember love instead of just loss. That felt like something. That felt like mattering. They ate together, and afterward, Ezra didn't disappear to his room like he had every other night. Instead, he sat by the fire, and Martha found herself sitting across from him, mending one of his shirts. "Tell me about Sarah," she said softly, "if you want to." Ezra stared into the flames, his face half shadow. "She was small, barely came up to my shoulder. Had a laugh that sounded like bells. We married young. I was 19. She was 17. Everyone said we was too young, but we didn't care. Built this place together, board by board." His hands gripped his knees. "She wanted children so bad. We tried for years. Finally, she got pregnant. We was so happy, Martha. So damn happy. She had a boy, Thomas. Perfect little thing with her eyes and my stubborn chin." "What happened?" Martha whispered. "Fever came through that winter. Sarah caught it first, then the baby. I rode for the doctor, but the snow was too deep. By the time I got back," his voice cracked, "I held my son while he died. Couldn't do nothing but hold him. Sarah went 2 days later, made me promise to stay human. Then she was gone." Martha's eyes burned. "I'm sorry. I stopped living after that," Ezra continued. "Kept breathing, kept working, but I wasn't alive. Just waiting to die, I guess. Then you showed up on my porch, and for the first time in 5 years, I felt something other than empty." He looked at her. "I felt needed. and that scared the hell out of me. Martha understood. I scare myself too, she admitted. Every time I start to feel safe, I remember that safe don't last. That people leave or die, or decide you ain't worth keeping. Silas really did a number on you, didn't he? Silas just said out loud what everyone else was thinking, Martha said bitterly. That I'm too big, too strong, too masculine. That I should be grateful any man would touch me. Ezra's jaw clenched. Silas was a goddamn fool. Maybe, but he wasn't wrong. Yes, he was. Ezra leaned forward, his eyes intense. Martha, you listening to me? He was wrong. You ain't too much of anything. You're strong and capable and honest. You work harder than any man I ever knew. You make this place feel like a home again instead of a tomb. Any man who couldn't see that was blind and stupid, and you deserved better. Martha's hands stilled on the mending. Why do you care? The question came out raw, vulnerable. Why do you care what I think about myself? Ezra held her gaze. Because I spent 5 years not caring about nothing. And now I'm starting to care again, and it's because of you. Because you remind me that there's still good things in this world, still reasons to try. The air between them shifted, charged with something neither of them had names for yet. Martha's heart hammered against her ribs. This was dangerous. This was hope wearing a different face. This was the kind of thing that could shatter her completely if it went wrong. She stood abruptly. I should turn in. Early morning tomorrow. Martha. Ezra stood too. I didn't mean to. You didn't do nothing wrong, she interrupted. That's the problem. You keep being kind, and I don't know what to do with kind. I only know how to handle cruel. She fled to her room before he could respond, before the tears could fall, before she could do something stupid like believe that a lonely cowboy could see her as anything other than convenient help. But as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, she couldn't stop replaying his words. You make this place feel like a home again. Outside her door, Ezra stood for a long moment, his hand raised to knock, to say something, to somehow fix what he'd broken. But he let his hand fall. Some things couldn't be rushed. Some people needed time to learn that they were worth wanting. He went to his own room, but for the first time in 5 years, he didn't sleep alone with ghosts. He slept with possibility. The next morning, Martha found a new pair of work gloves on the kitchen table, thick leather ones that would actually fit her large hands. No note, no explanation, just a gift that said, I see you. I see what you need. She put them on, and they fit perfect. When she walked outside, Ezra was already at the barn, and he nodded at her like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Martha was starting to believe she might be worth keeping after all. Winter tightened its grip on the ranch. The work got harder breaking ice on water troughs, keeping the cattle from freezing, fighting through snowdrifts to reach the barn. But Martha thrived. Her body was built for hard work, and for the first time in her life, someone appreciated that instead of resenting it. Ezra relied on her strength, trusted her judgment, treated her like an equal partner instead of a servant or a burden. And slowly, carefully, they became something more than partners. It started small, Ezra making sure there was hot coffee waiting when she came in from morning chores, Martha leaving biscuits wrapped in cloth on his workbench when he skipped meals. They'd sit by the fire after dinner, talking about everything and nothing childhoods, dreams they'd given up on, fears they'd never spoken aloud. Ezra told her about learning to rope cattle from his father. Martha confessed she'd always wanted to learn to read better, but Silas had said education was wasted on women. I could teach you, Ezra offered quietly. I got some books, nothing fancy, but... You'd do that? Martha's voice was small. Martha, I'd do just about anything to see you smile. The words hung in the air between them, honest and terrifying. That night, Ezra pulled out Sarah's old primer, and they sat side by side at the table, his shoulder touching hers, his patience infinite as she stumbled over words. When she finally read a whole sentence without help, she looked up at him with such joy that Ezra forgot how to breathe. I did it, she whispered. You did it, he agreed, and his hand covered hers on the table. Neither of them moved. Neither of them pulled away. The fire crackled, the wind howled outside. and inside 2 broken people started believing they might be able to heal each other. The plate slipped from Martha's hands and shattered across the kitchen floor. She froze, arms flying up defensively, her whole body bracing for the blow that always came after breaking something. Silas had taught her that lesson with his fists. Clumsy women deserved punishment. But the hit never came. Instead, Ezra knelt slowly, carefully, like he was approaching a spooked horse. He started picking up the broken pieces, his movements deliberate and gentle. "Who taught you that you deserved hitting?" His voice was soft, but anger simmered underneath, not at her, but for her. Martha couldn't answer. Her throat had closed completely. She stood there shaking, arms still raised, waiting for reality to correct itself, for this man to show his true nature. "Martha." Ezra stood, the broken pieces cradled in his hands. "Look at me." She forced her eyes up. "You're safe here. Long as you're under my roof, no one raises a hand to you. Not me, not anyone. You understand?" She nodded, but the tears came anyway, hot, ashamed, unstoppable. Ezra set down the pieces and opened his arms, not grabbing, just offering. Martha collapsed into him, and he held her while she sobbed against his chest, 5 years of pain pouring out in gut-wrenching waves. "He hit you," Ezra said quietly. "Not a question. Every time I wasn't fast enough, good enough, quiet enough," Martha choked out. "Said I should be grateful he kept me. Said no one else would want a freak like me." Ezra's arms tightened around her. "That's a goddamn lie. You hear me, Martha? That man was a coward and a fool, and everything he told you was poison." He pulled back just enough to cup her face, his thumbs wiping away tears. "You're beautiful. You're strong. You're the best thing that's happened to this ranch to me in 5 years. Don't ever let his voice in your head tell you different." "I'm scared," she whispered. "Of what?" "Of believing you. Of hoping this is real. Of losing it." Ezra pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm scared too. Terrified. But I'd rather be terrified with you than numb without you." The kiss happened like a dam breaking, desperate, hungry, real. Martha had been kissed before, but never like this. Never like she was precious. Never like every inch of her mattered. Ezra's hands trembled as they traced her spine, reverent and sure. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his hand over her heart. "Stay with me," he said. "Not as hired help. Not out of desperation. Stay because you want to. Because this thing between us is real, and I'll be damned if I let fear steal it. What if the town? Let them talk. I don't give a damn what they think." But the town had other plans. 3 days later, they rode into town for supplies. The whispers started the moment they stepped into the general store. Women clutched their skirts away like Martha carried disease. Men smirked and elbowed each other. The store owner, Mr. Brennan, refused to serve her. "We don't cater to women of questionable morals," he said coldly. Ezra's fist slammed on the counter. "You'll serve my partner with respect, or you'll never see another cent from me or any rancher I know." "Partner?" Mrs. Blackwood, the banker's wife, laughed cruelly. "Is that what they're calling it now? Everyone knows what she is, Mr. Dalton. A desperate woman living in sin with a hermit. You've ruined whatever reputation you had left." Martha felt the words like physical blows. She turned to leave, to run, to disappear. But Ezra caught her hand. "Mrs. Blackwood," he said, his voice deadly calm. "Martha Hawthorne is worth 10 of you. She works harder, loves deeper, and has more integrity in her little finger than this whole town combined. If you can't see that, it's because you're too small-minded to recognize real quality." He threw money on the counter, grabbed supplies without waiting for Brennan's approval, and led Martha out. But the damage was done. That night, she packed her carpet bag. Ezra found Martha in the barn at dawn, her bag packed, her shoulders hunched in that way that made her look small despite her height. The horses nickered softly in their stalls, and morning light filtered through the gaps in the wood, painting everything gold and fragile. "Where do you think you're going?" His voice was rough with sleep and panic. "You deserve better than what I bring you," Martha said without turning around. "They're right. I'm ruining your life, your reputation, everything. Stop." He crossed to her in 3 strides, spinning her around. You don't get to decide what I deserve. You don't get to run because you're scared. I ain't scared, I'm terrified. Same as me. His hands gripped her shoulders. I'm terrified. I'll lose you. Terrified. I don't deserve this second chance at happiness. But I'll be damned if I let you walk away because some small-minded fools can't see what I see. And what do you see? Martha's voice broke. Ezra dropped to one knee right there in the barn, pulling a ring from his pocket, his mother's ring. Simple gold worn smooth with age. I see my future. I see my partner. I see the woman I love. Marry me, Martha. Not because you need a roof. Not because I need help. Marry me because I can't imagine waking up another day without you beside me. Because you make me want to live again instead of just survive. Because I love every magnificent inch of you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving you're worth everything. I can't give you children, she choked out. Silas said I was barren, worthless. Then Silas was a fool. Ezra's eyes blazed. You've already given me more than I ever hoped for. You gave me a reason to laugh again. To hope. To believe that broken things can heal if they find the right fit. I don't need children, Martha. I need you. She was crying now, ugly, honest tears streaming down her beautiful face. I'm scared I'll wake up and this won't be real. Then I'll remind you every morning it is. He slipped the ring on her finger. Say yes. Please, Martha. Say yes, yes. The word came out like a prayer. Yes, yes, yes. Ezra stood and kissed her like she was air, and he'd been drowning. That night, he made love to his wife with the reverence of a man who understood he'd been given something precious. He touched every scar, kissed every inch she'd been taught to hide, and whispered against her skin, "You're perfect, every part of you." 6 months later, Martha stood in her garden, dirt under her nails, sun warming her face. The town had slowly learned to respect her, or at least feared Ezra's wrath enough to stay quiet. She'd found work that fulfilled her, land that was hers, a man who saw her truly and loved what he saw. Ezra brought her coffee, kissed her temple. What are you thinking about? How I almost ran. How I almost missed this. He pulled her close. This magnificent woman who'd saved him as much as he'd saved her. I would have chased you, would have followed you to the ends of the earth to bring you home. Home, Martha repeated, tasting the word. For the first time in her life, she knew exactly what it meant. Not a place. Not 4 walls and a roof. Home was wherever this man was, wherever she was seen and valued and loved completely. She was finally, beautifully, home. The giant widow who thought she was worth nothing had found a lonely cowboy who showed her she was worth everything. And together, they built a love that the whole territory would remember, the kind of love that proved second chances were real, that broken hearts could heal, and that sometimes the people the world throws away are the most precious treasures of all. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that you're worth more than the world has told you, hit that notification bell so you never miss another story that will restore your faith in love. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Let's build a community of people who believe in second chances and love that heals.